we'll do 2 more examples. So what I notice on this one is it doesn't factor. It does factor, but none of the factors cancel. So not going to be any holes. The x-intercept is where I put 0 for y. So what would make this equal 0 is if x was 0. So x-intercept is 0, 0. Y-intercept is when I put 0 for x, and we already found that. It's 0, 0. The vertical asymptote is an undefined line. So what would make this undefined is if I had 0 on the bottom. So the place where x squared minus 4 equals 0. So x squared equals 4. So x equals plus or minus 2. So at -2 I have a 0, and positive 2 I have an asymptote. So -2 and positive 2. So this means I'm going to have some kind of graph here, some kind of graph here, and a different kind of graph there. The horizontal asymptote is where the degrees. So this is degree 2, this is degree 2. So if these are the same, you look at the numbers in front. So it'd be 3 divided by 1, which is 3. So this time my horizontal asymptote is at y equals 3. So it looks like that. All right, so I'm going to have to check out my table. I want some numbers smaller than -2, some numbers between -2 and 2, and some numbers bigger than 2. So again, for the sake of time, I could put these values in here, or I could put them in my graphing calculator. But what's going to happen is you're going to get some points over here that graph like this, some points over here that graph like this, and some points here that graph like this. So this 3 is a horizontal asymptote for these 2 parts, but this one doesn't even make it up there. But notice I never cross the vertical asymptote. All right, let's do this last one. We're not going to graph it. We'll just find the different characteristics. So the first thing I want to do is graph it, or excuse me, factor it. And what I notice is these cancel out, so there'll be a 1 here. So I am going to have a hole this time, and the hole would be the place where this becomes 0. So I'm going to have a hole at 3 for x. And then if I go back and put 3 in for x, I have 3 plus 3, which is 6, over 1, which is 6. So there would be a place on my graph where there's a hole. Now, when I actually put graph on my graphing calculator, you won't see that. But when I type this equation in, next to 3, it will say error, because there won't be anything at 3, because there's a hole there. All right, x-intercept, put 0 for y. So what makes this top part equal 0? Is when x squared equals 9, so x equals plus or minus 3. So I have an x-intercept at 3, 0, and -3, 0. And we know there's really not an x-intercept there because there's a hole. Y-intercept is when I put 0 for x. So I get -9 over -3, which is 3. So I should say a hole trumps an intercept. A vertical asymptote is when you have 0 on the bottom. So x equals 3 would be a vertical asymptote. And it just happens to be at the hole, doesn't it? And then the vertical asymptote, or the horizontal asymptote, since it's bigger on top and not on bottom, then it's going to be at none. No horizontal. So this is an interesting one. Because when I go back and I put values in, what's going to happen is it's going to be an equation that looks like this. It's going to be linear, but it has a hole at 3.